Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Yo, it's Scott Groves here with two friends. The very first episode we did, I think, was with three people, and now we're on the 100th episode, which is pretty crazy. So we're going to do it with three people. Two of my newest friends here in Vegas, Jordan Worth on the right, the skinnier, maybe more flexible one, but we'll talk about that later, and Patrick Panda, if you look him up on Instagram, Shakut Hoffman. We're going to find out why you have two last names and one of them is Shakut. They're both brown belts at 10th Planet Jiu Jitsu in Henderson. We'll explain what that means. They're both coaches. We'll explain what that means. They both make a living off of teaching Jiu Jitsu, which is like crazy to me that that's really a thing. But we'll get into it. So give me the 60-second Reader's Digest version, Patrick, on where you're born, where you're raised, and how did you make it to Vegas with all the other transplants?
Yeah, so I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, lived there in Ohio for a couple years as a kid, but I grew up in a town right outside of Omaha, Nebraska. So I just say Omaha because that's the only one anybody knows. And then in 2016, I didn't have much going on back in Omaha. I had quit a big corporate job, gone back to school, hated being in school for my master's program. And my sister had a job opportunity out here, and I fucking packed up a truck and moved out to Vegas. So that was back in 2016 and been here pretty much ever since. Moved away for a year and a half to live in Korea and been back now for about just over a year. So
love it, man. I want to get to the Korea thing because that to me is super fascinating. Jordan, you're an oddity, man. You're born, bred, and raised in Vegas. You're not a transplant. You're like one of the three originals.
Yeah, man. I'm born and raised down in Henderson. My part of Henderson, people, the locals refer to it as Hendertucky. It's like a lot of redneck type kids, but they're also intermingling with like the hood gangster type kids. And the hood gangster type kids are also intermingling with like the normal like white trailer trash type kids as well, you know? So like it develops a very intermingled type of culture, and it's like a very interesting place, you know.
So not sending a lot of people to like the Ivy Leagues or anything like that.
There's
right
not
now.
A lot of people that make it out of Hendertucky, man.
Oh man, Hendertucky. You know. For context, how old are you?
I am 26.
And how old are you, Patrick?
I just turned 30 a couple months ago.
Just turned 30, man. Everything's downhill from here, bro.
I know.
I think you hit 40, it gets even worse. Like nothing repairs. Like nothing repairs itself. You actually have to go to the doctor and stuff. So 26, you've been doing jiu-jitsu how long for context?
For a little over 10 years now. I started when I was 15. So like 10 and a half years about.
And can you tell us about that journey? Like, how do you stumble into jiu-jitsu in your teenage years? And then how does that become like a huge part of your life in your 20s?
My dad put me in jiu-jitsu when I was really young, but I had bad ADHD. So I would just run around the mat and I would just terrorize the mat to the instructor. And so when my dad brought me back, I was around like 9 or 10 and he tried to put me in wrestling. And I didn't know what the hell wrestling was. I thought it was jiu-jitsu. My game plan, I remember at the time, my first wrestling match, I was trying to take the kid down, get full mount, and go for an Americana in like a folk-style wrestling tournament. That was my game plan. And I went up against one of the coach's sons, and the kid shucks around to my back, grabs a body lock, and suplexes me straight onto my neck. I'm like 10 years old, bro. And
that explains a lot,
dude. It's like my neck, like I get slammed straight on my neck. My spine just like I hear a ton of pops in my neck. I start crying. I'm like totally broken. And my dad's like, "It's okay, like things happen. Like you're gonna go out there and you'll get better next time." And I'm like, "No, Dad, I want to quit." And he's like, "No, don't quit." And I'm like, "Dad, this is not for me. Like I'm not one of those guys. Like I'm quitting." And so I quit. And then I started training parkour when I turned like 14, 15. I did parkour for a while and then pushed.
Parkour, the only thing I can think of is The Office when they're jumping off the desks and onto the trash cans. They're like, parkour.
And I got bullied really, really bad in like middle school. You know,
shocking that you were doing parkour and getting bullied.
I got bullied so bad in my 6th grade year. I left my 6th grade middle school. It's called Brown Junior High School. There's a lot of brown and black kids there. And so at the time I was like, man, all these brown and black kids are bullying me. I'm going to leave and I'm going to go to Burkholder. It's a brand new school and I'm not going to get bullied there. And then I go to Burkholder for 7th and 8th grade and all the bros, like the white kids who wear long socks and ride bikes, like the California type kids, but they're in Nevada. Those kids ruined me, bro. Those kids were way more ruthless than the brown black kids, man. And then at that point I realized rule number one my dad taught me when I was like 3. My dad was like, all right, rule number 1, Jordan, everybody's assholes. Everybody's a fucking asshole, Jordan. And I was like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're brown, black, white, everybody's a fucking asshole, I guess.
Equal opportunity assholes.
Oh man, everybody's assholes. Okay. And I guess my dad was right. And then I get to high school, I get bullied even more. And
were you like 90 pounds or something? Because you're pretty
I've been
thin rail thin guy.
I've been 6 foot, 155 pounds since I was 15 years old, right? Yeah. And so, I don't want to be like, what was me and shit. So anyways, I got bullied. I was like, oh, I'm not afraid to fight. Like, I thought I was afraid to fight, but I'm not afraid to fight. Like, because there was a bunch of times where I would get bullied and I would feel like I should stand up for myself, and I wouldn't stand up for myself. But they wouldn't ever, like, actually hit me in my face. Like, it would never come to that typically. And so when it did with a bunch of people, I wasn't afraid at all. And so I realized, I'm not afraid to fight. Like, there's zero part of my brain that I don't care. I know even if I'm going to lose the fight, I'll still stand there and fight with the guy. Like, I'm not going to run away. No matter who's in front of me, I don't care who's in front of me. I'm not running. And I didn't know that about myself.
I saw you coming out of ADCC, and you don't know this because we didn't really know each other then. I saw you coming out of ADCC, and you got your foot fucked up. And somebody stopped you, and they're like, hey, bro, you okay? He was like, yeah, man, this motherfucker, second time he got me in that fucking footlock, fuck, and you're just...
No. Oh, at the ADCC, so I didn't mean to cut you off, but the only person who's caught me in a footlock twice is Keith Krikorian. Let's get that straight.
All right, well, okay. Somebody caught your foot real bad, and you were so
Yes.
fucking mad because you're like, I had this guy, mental slip, and I could just tell in that moment, like, your foot was fucked up.
I took too many mushrooms at ADCC.
Yeah, you were kind of limping out of there, and I could see it in your eyes that all you wanted to do was get back on the mat and fight this guy again.
I would have went right away. Yeah.
I know, because you knew that you had made some, like, little mental error, and it cost you the back, and you were so fucking mad. And I was like, dude, this guy is fucking fired up, man. Because all I had seen is you and your tie-dye and like the Jardine sponsored weed and stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm sure this guy's really chill. He just like rolls and like whatever. And then I saw you coming out there and you were so angry. Like, I was going to say hi and I'm like, fuck, Gabriel, let's go that fucking way. All right.
I'm an emotional guy for sure.
I can tell. All right. So then you fall in love with jiu-jitsu because you got your ass beat and you're ready to fight.
I got jumped, man, and then I realized that I had a bunch of issues in my life. Okay, I'm getting bullied. I don't know how to talk to girls or attract a girl properly. I don't know how to get a job and pay for my potential family in the future. Because at the end of the day, that's all I ever wanted was to have a family and kids and be able to support them. Yeah. And so I was.
And by the way, spoiler alert: knowing a bunch of the guys in the gym. Jiu-Jitsu does not teach you how to talk to girls because there's a lot of attractive girls. A lot of attractive girls at the gym. They come in on an open mat, and I'm like, not a single guy has any game to tactfully say hi. Yeah, anybody that thinks Jiu-Jitsu is going to solve your problems with girls, you can put that out of your mind. Getting jumped, confidence, focus at school, making money. Those are all probably good life lessons at Jiu-Jitsu. Talking to girls, not one of them.
Yeah, and so that's how I started training Jiu-Jitsu. And like I said, I liked Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva was my favorite fighter. I liked strikers and stuff. And the story's about over. I started training jiu-jitsu, and I started training MMA. I was training everything. And I only was training jiu-jitsu because I knew the importance of jiu-jitsu because I grew up watching MMA. And I grew up in a fighting household, and my dad was a jiu-jitsu blue belt. So I was always preached to the importance of jiu-jitsu and that it beats other martial arts if you don't know jiu-jitsu. So my game plan was to become a really, really good striker, and I just knew I had to learn just enough jiu-jitsu to have anti-jiu-jitsu, essentially, to stop jiu-jitsu because I knew its effectiveness. And then I started sparring with guys that were like amateur fighters that were grown men. I'm 15, 16 at the time. 15, exactly 15. And then I'm sparring with a guy who's 20, 21. He's an amateur fighter. And even if I'm better than him or just as good as him in striking, he would hit me way harder if I started doing anything to him, and he would turn it up, and it would be a different thing. And then in jiu-jitsu, through only a couple weeks of training, I started choking that same guy out, and I was rolling him up in the mats. And I was like, oh my God, this is kind of like a superpower. Like, I didn't know jiu-jitsu was this effective. Like, I didn't know I would gravitate it to like this. Like, I can actually beat somebody who's bigger and stronger than me, even though I'm not as big and strong than them with jiu-jitsu. Like, this is really cool. And then my coach at the time, he was a purple belt. He came from like a Gracie lineage, and he showed the rubber guard at the time. Thank God he did, which I don't understand why he did till this day, because he came from Gracie lineage. He came from Gracie Humaita, right? But he showed the rubber guard, and he showed gogo plata and omoplata, and I learned it as a 15-year-old kid, and I've always been real flexible. And I did it, and I was just a fascination lit within my brain. And I was like, dude, this is the coolest shit I've ever fucking done in my life. Like, I cannot believe this. What is this? Like, and he's like, oh, it's this thing called the rubber guard. This guy, Eddie Bravo, does it. It's 10th Planet. Like you can go home and look it up on YouTube if you want. And I was like, what else can you do in the rubber guard besides gogoplata and omoplata? And he's like, there's not really anything else you can do. It's just gogoplata and omoplata. That's it. And I was like, I don't even train jiu-jitsu, and I think there's more you could do there. Like, I could figure something else besides a gogoplata and omoplata from this position. So I go home and I look it up. I found out about Submissions 101, Eddie Bravo, Joe Rogan. I start listening to them, and Joe Rogan and Eddie Bravo are big cannabis advocates.
So
right?
what year is this? You're like 16 years old?
This is 2012. I'm 15.
15. Got
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So Joe Rogan's like, the podcast has just started. Like, jiu-jitsu's starting to get into the mainstream. There's like,
Yes.
there's like real, you know,
10th
it's
Planet
it's
is
growing
still,
fast.
Eddie versus Hoyler 2 has not happened, right? When I first start training 10th Planet, because there was no 10th Planet Las Vegas at the time. So when I delved deep into 10th Planet and I was learning the rubber guard, the lockdown, the twister, and I was just diving as much as I could into the 10th Planet system, everybody was calling me an idiot. Everybody, all of my training partners, even my coach was like, dude, like, stop spending so much time watching this. You're wasting your time. This shit doesn't really work. Like, look at the highest levels. Look at the ADCC. Look at the UFC. Look at the world champions. There's nobody doing these techniques. This doesn't work, right? These are like unproven techniques. You're wasting your time. You should be learning the other things. But I was gonna get to I listened to Joe Rogan and Eddie Bravo talk about cannabis, right? And I took DARE, and I always thought drugs were drugs and drugs were bad. And so I needed something to help me when I was in high school, but I never thought about ever going to pharmaceutical drugs because I was always so anti-drug, no matter what type of drug, drugs are drugs and drugs are bad. And then I listened to Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan, and I remember being furious. I was like, they're lying. Why are they lying? These guys are lying to everybody. What's going on? These guys are like influential people, you know, like they're teaching the next generation. Like, why are they telling people to do drugs?
And by the way, just for the juxtaposition, and Patrick, we'll get to you in a second. I knew there was going to be no problem filling a couple hours.
I'm sorry this story took too long. It's literally right. This is the last words I'm saying. I'm going to let Patrick talk.
But the best thing
is
the juxtaposition about what you're saying. For those of you that are listening and not watching on YouTube, Jordan currently has a Jardine marijuana dispensary hat on because he's sponsored by them in his in his jiu-jitsu career. So it's funny that you went from like, dare to keep kids off drugs, all drugs are bad, to 11 years later you're like, well, I'm sponsored by a dispensary and I really like marijuana.
The High Rollers shirt too.
Oh, and the High Roller BJJ shirt. Yeah.
I was for my 9th and 10th grade year, I was what you call straight edge. Straight edge is like, you don't do drugs, you don't drink, you don't like do bad things essentially.
Yeah.
So I eventually found marijuana. You know, I used to be extremely anti-drug.
I found it on the side of the
And then
street.
I was like, holy shit, there's this thing out there. There's this drug out there that can essentially save me and like help me with all of my issues that I'm dealing with. And till this day, I tell people it was through finding jiu-jitsu, right? I found MMA and then I found jiu-jitsu. And then through jiu-jitsu, I found 10th Planet. Through 10th Planet, I found marijuana. But without finding marijuana, I would not have graduated high school, period. I would not have I would not have had the ability mentally to be able to get through high school. All right. I ended up getting through high school and I got my diploma, and that is the single hardest thing I've ever done as a human being. That was 1,000 times harder than getting my brown belt or like competing at the highest levels. Getting my high school diploma was the hardest thing I've ever done. And so like different people have different paths, man, you know, like,
it's
and
totally true.
For me personally, dude, high school was a living hell, and the diploma, I thought I had to get my diploma in order to be like a sustainable person. And now I worked so hard to get my diploma, and every single job application I've ever applied for, they never ask you for a diploma.
No,
so
they
if
don't
you're
give a
listening to
shit.
this, you don't need your high school diploma. It doesn't matter. It's not real. Okay. It doesn't actually matter. If you're going to college, then they might ask you, but if you're just trying to go to high school and that's all you want, and then if you, I need to get my high school diploma so I can actually no, you don't. All right. Just drop out, get your blue collar job, get a little like,
Probably
jump start
make more
on the
money.
world. You'll make way more money. I didn't know this. Nobody told me this. So like legitimately, if you're listening to this at the time and you're thinking about going blue collar and you're not going to college, like, learn what you need to learn to like be a sustainable person, and then get out and go the path. You know what I mean? Because the only reason why you need a diploma is for college. If you're not going to college, you don't need a diploma. And nobody told me that. I wish they did, because I went through hell to get that diploma and I didn't need it.
So Patrick, I'm going to guess your story is different. And knowing that you grew up in Nebraska, in my mind, you just grew up like being on a path to wrestling because everybody in Nebraska and Iowa and Ohio, they just wrestle because that's what they have to do.
There's nothing else to do.
There's nothing else to do but wrestle like sheep or something. And I went to Fort Riley, Kansas. I was there for 3 years. There's really nothing to do. Like I was probably a functioning alcoholic in the Army because all there is to do is drink. So tell us about your road from Nebraska to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. So to your point about wrestling, I grew up, I always liked playing a lot of different sports, like played football. Basketball was actually what I enjoyed doing the most when I was a kid. I am not very good at scoring points, but I am a fucking monster to deal with on defense. Like my last year of playing basketball, I fouled out every single game except for one. And the only one I didn't foul out, we had 6 kids, and one of the kids broke his arm and couldn't finish the game. And they're like, Pat, you can't foul out. And I'm like, we just finished the first half of the game, and I already have 3 fouls. Like, I don't know how to play basketball without, like, going hard in the paint and, like, not allowing buckets. Because they used to send me in and be like, hey, like, he's scoring too much. Like, just make him not want to. And they'd just send me in there, and I'd be like, you want me to play rough basketball, like defensive basketball? That's what I like doing. And it was that year after fouling out every game that my coach pulled me aside, and she actually told me, she was like, Pat, you know, we'd love to have you here and everything. And yeah, she's actually a good family friend of ours. Like I grew up with her kids and everything, but she's like, basketball might not be the sport for you. You might want to try wrestling. Like that might just be better for you. And so I was like, Rebecca, you're right. Like, and so the next year I got into wrestling in junior high. And, you know, I was never great at wrestling. It wasn't my main focus. I did it mostly. They're like, oh, this will help with football. Like football is what I like to play. And my parents, especially in high school, had a rule. As long as I was playing sports and involved in another extracurricular activity, so I played the saxophone for like 10 years. As long as I was doing that, I didn't have to get a job. And they would pay for my gas money and everything. So I was like done. Like I'll go to band early in the morning and I'll play every sport so I don't have to get a job. It didn't apply in the summers. Like I had to go work in the summers and everything like that. But so I wrestled in junior high, and then in high school, I wrestled all through high school. And what led me to jiu-jitsu, I had tried out a little bit of jiu-jitsu before my senior wrestling season, like literally a month or two. And then I remember contacting that gym, like, hey, I'm going to do wrestling. Like, can you put my account on hold? I'll come back after wrestling season. And, you know, at that time, I think I maybe literally did 6 classes before wrestling season started. And my senior wrestling season, I was excited because this was finally like a year. Like I felt pretty good about the year. I was doing well and everything. My very first match of the year, which was just like an exhibition match. It wouldn't have even counted towards my record. I tore 2 ligaments in this elbow. Oh. I ended up missing all the way until like the tournament before districts. So in Nebraska, they have districts and then state. I think that's still true. It might be different now. But they had districts and then state. So I came back. I had 1 tournament before districts. I had to move up a weight class because my senior year, I had gone down to like 189, and our 215er had gotten injured. And so when I came back, they're like, you're going to go to 215. And I'm coming off this injury.
So you've always been a pretty big boy.
Oh, yeah.
215 in high school is a big boy.
I was playing defensive and offensive line for football. And so, like, yeah, I remember I left junior high wrestling. I wrestled at 160. And by the time football started for me in high school, I was 210.
Holy shit, dude.
Like, that in that time, I literally all I did was eat. I lifted weights and I practiced football. Like, that was it. And, I mean, my parents can attest to their grocery bill during that time. Like, I was drinking, like, a gallon of milk a day and, like, everything. Because I was, like, I got sent to an all-boys private high school, partially because my parents didn't want me hanging around with my friends from public school. Because
because they were like Jordan.
Well, we used to go, like, fortunately, Nebraska has cornfields, so running from cops is pretty easy. Like, you just go in the cornfields. They don't want to chase you in there, especially if the corn stalks are high and everything. So, yeah, they sent me to this all-boys high school that had a really good football team, and I was like, cool, I'm going to play for this team. That was my focus, so I just got big, whatever, and I just wrestled. Again, I didn't want to go get a job. Like, my older sister was working at a grocery store because in Nebraska, like, you can get signed off to start working at, like, 14.
Yeah, I was like 4 or something,
Yeah.
right? They don't care.
Well,
it's a farm.
Into the coal mines.
Right.
I worked on a farm for a week. I hated it. But, yeah, so I missed, like, my whole senior wrestling season. I missed going to state by a point. I lost to a guy in the weight class up after missing the whole season by a point, and that just pissed me off so much because I was so excited about my senior wrestling season. And I remember my first jiu-jitsu class after wrestling was done. This is what really hooked me. I trained at a school that was a gi school that I started at. Like, they were an MMA school, but back then all jiu-jitsu was in the gi pretty much.
Yeah, big kimono, big robe. For people that are, if anybody's still listening and not interested in jiu-jitsu, God bless you, first of all. Second of all, yes, a gi is like a big kimono, like a thick robe that you throw people around in. Think like a judo or sambo or something like that.
Or feudal Japan, like the
Feudal
pictures
Japan,
you
there you
see of feudal Japan. So I remember going into this class, again, I'm about 210 pounds, getting done with wrestling season. I was in pretty good shape and everything. And we did the technique portion of class, and then it's time for rolling. And the instructor pairs me up with this blue belt girl who had matching blue hair. I can't remember her name, but if I ever saw her face again, I'd know it in an instant. And, like, I never saw her after this day. So it's a weird part. Like, blue belts disappear. But I went with her, and I'm like, oh, this little girl, I'll go light with her. I didn't know what a blue belt meant.
Yeah, you're a 210-pound wrestler, football player. You're like an alpha male, all boys high school. You feel like a badass.
Yeah,
and she fucked you up, didn't she?
She choked me unconscious 3 times in a 5-minute round. Like, that first, I'm going easy, whatever, and then she hits me with a collar choke, and then, like, I'm like, I'm good. I'm out. And then I get back up, and I'm like, this is how we're going to fucking do it. And I, like, go a little bit harder. I'm like, she's still a girl, like, way smaller than me. I'm going a little bit harder. She's got my back. Chokes me out again. I pass out. Like, they're shaking my legs to wake me up.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Oh, you can sit out. And I'm like, no. And I get up, and I'm like, I'm going to fucking kill this bitch. And I just jump. I'm going full bore. And then literally, like, within a minute or so later, she put me to sleep again. And that at that time, the instructor was like, hey, you're done for the day, buddy. Like,
yeah, we're going to give you brain damage on your first session back.
But, you know, after that, I was like, I need to fucking learn how to do this stuff. So I trained at that school for about a year and a half, and I loved it because they were like a full MMA gym. They had a kickboxing program, everything like that. I loved kickboxing, actually, more than jiu-jitsu at first.
Me too.
And so I was there for a while, and then I hurt my knee pretty bad. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I was also in college at the time, and I ended up taking 2.5 years basically off. Like, it's kind to myself to say that I trained once a month,
right,
during that time, but I basically took 2.5 years off. And I ended up canceling my membership at the gym. I'm like, I'm not going enough. But one of my buddies that I worked with at the time was like, hey man, like, I know you used to do jiu-jitsu. Like, I'm going to check out this place called 10th Planet. And I didn't even know what 10th Planet was at the time, but I was kind of like, yeah, you know, I feel good. I'll get back into jiu-jitsu. And, I went with him, and this was 10th Planet Omaha. And although it says 10th Planet Omaha, they're located in Bellevue, Nebraska, not Omaha. But anyway, so he convinced me to go with him, and then ever since then, I got hooked again immediately. When they were like, it's no gi, I'm like, fuck yeah, I don't have to wear that thing anymore.
Explain to people that don't do jiu-jitsu or that maybe do gi and they're like, okay, no gi, a little bit more like wrestling. You just wear some shorts and a rash guard. Can you explain to them like the addiction part? Because I've heard that like I really enjoy it, and I'm gonna go 4 or 5 times a week, and I've taken some private lessons from both of you, and like I really enjoy it. And I think maybe I found the right instructors in my 20s, I would have been addicted. But I've heard the word addicted multiple times from people where they're like, dude, this is now my life, and I'm going to try to work out 2 or 3 times a day, and I have this goal, and maybe I want to fight, and maybe I want to compete. Can you explain the allure?
Yeah, like in my mind, people need struggle in their life. Like overall life is fairly easy. Like if we think of us as humans, like in the past, like life was fucking difficult, especially if we're even talking like 200-300 years ago. Like just getting by was fucking hard. And like, yeah, life sucks sometimes nowadays, but comparatively, man, like it's fucking easy. So like people need struggle. Like it's been a part of our evolution forever. And that physical struggle you get, the camaraderie of everybody, like we're all working towards a common goal. Like, yes, we fucking strangle each other and try and break each other's arms, but ultimately everyone's in the room because like we want to help each other get better. Like I only get better if you get better. So like if everyone else in the room gets better, like this is part of my gripe with what used to be like the secretiveness of jiu-jitsu, like don't train with other people. It's like, why the fuck not? I want everybody to know everything, because then we all have to get better.
Right.
And then it's just like the solving the puzzle. Like it's a fascinating puzzle to constantly be solving, and you got to solve it quickly, like under stress, and the physicality of it. Like, so I think all those factors really weigh in to what makes it so addictive. Because yeah, especially like you take people that work, you know, behind a desk or whatever, they don't have a lot of that physical activity in their life. Maybe they fucking hate the people that they work with. Like, I know when I worked some desk jobs, I fucking hated everybody I worked with. But I go to jiu-jitsu and, like, see this wide range of people, like, from all different walks of life. And we just have a common goal, and we're just, like, we're here to get better. We're hanging out, like, and that's just, you know, the sense of community and everybody trying to get better, I think, is a huge part of it. And then the physical struggle, I think, is part of it, because something about our fucking monkey brain wants that.
Yeah. Say some more, Jordan, because I know you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a little bit, everything Pat said is I completely agree with, and is for sure a big part of it as well. But I think, honestly, what a big part of why people train jiu-jitsu, especially initially, and I also think it's also a major reason why the blue belt blues is such a contributing factor in jiu-jitsu and such a real thing in jiu-jitsu. If you don't know what the blue belt blues is, the blue belt blues, and blue belt is the first belt you get in jiu-jitsu, and the dropout rate after blue belt is like above 80%. It's staggering.
So it goes white, you're a beginner, you like just get your ass kicked nonstop for a year. Then you're like, cool, you know some moves, so you're a blue belt.
Yes.
Like basically, I'm a blue belt based on the previous gym I was at. I can like get my ass kicked safely. That's kind of what a blue belt is. It's like, hey, I can get my ass kicked without injuring myself.
And if you were to go against somebody who does not know jiu-jitsu, you're gonna smoke them almost every single time, unless they're just they have major advantages on you. Like they're a lot younger and faster than you, and they're pretty good already. Like they grew up fighting a little bit.
Even
they're
then,
way bigger and stronger.
You're gonna
than
be
you.
safe.
Even then, you're probably gonna beat them, right? Even then,
it's like
do you hear yourself?
There's
right?
some weird shit. You're like, oh, if I just keep my elbow close to my knee, he's not gonna hurt me.
Exactly. So what does this mean? The majority of the reason why people train jiu-jitsu is because people want to feel safe. People want to feel confident. People want to feel like they can handle themselves and they can protect themselves, because you're always, as soon as you enter the world, everybody around you is a potential threat. If they decide to attack you and they're bigger and stronger than you, or they know how to fight better than you, then you're going to lose. And that's a scary reality. That is the reality of the world. And tapping people out and strangling people against their will and building yourself up while single-handedly showing people their other place in the food chain becomes very addictive.
Yeah.
That's the addictive part.
I totally get that. Patrick, are you a little bit more zen than this? Or do you even have like the guy in the gym or the guy in your psyche who you're like, dude, I just got to get good enough to like either beat this guy or manipulate this guy, or like, I just got to dominate this guy?
I don't know. For me, it's just an endless puzzle. I don't really give a fuck about tapping anybody. Like competing was the reason I got into jiu-jitsu, but competition, like personally for me, doesn't interest me anymore. Like I get more excited watching the people that train with me compete than like when I go compete myself. When I go compete myself, I win. If I lose, Like I don't really give a fuck, but I get super excited if I see like one of the people that trains with me win, or if they lose, I'm like, oh, this is what we can work on next. So like,
dude, that's like the hallmark of like a great coach or a great mentor. You should have kids immediately.
I want to have like 12, like.
Better get your girlfriend working on it, bro.
I know. Like we've discussed
12.
this.
Oh my
Better
God.
put a ring on it.
What you
Already
just
did,
say?
Oh, you did?
actually.
Oh, you're
on our
engaged?
trip, yeah.
Hey,
On our
congratulations,
trip.
man. I didn't know that.
Thank you.
Man. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That's super cool.
But
What's that? There's some movie where the guy's like, one vagina for the rest of your life. Way to think it through, bro.
I know I've seen that clip before, but I mean, everyone gets confused. They're like, "Wait, I thought you were already married." I've said wife for a long time because we've been together for quite a while, and then I was like, "Yeah, I just made it official now." Like,
Yeah, that's awesome.
I gave her the ring and everything.
So I want to ask, like, for you guys, what it means to be a brown belt. Brown's kind of weird to me because I'm like, well, what does that mean in the like pecking order, skill level? What does a brown belt mean to both of you? Which is one of the reasons I want to interview you guys, because like, what did it take to get there, and then like, what does it mean? So maybe we'll start with you, Jordan.
So blue belt typically is a hard out. Like you can roll with a blue belt and you're a hard round, you're hard to submit, and you know the basics of jiu-jitsu, right? You know the basic fundamentals, like the basic grand scheme of what jiu-jitsu is.
Yeah, I almost got you off my body the other day. I was so proud, and then you fucking just fell back on my chest, and I was like deflated. Anyway, I digress.
Purple belt, you should be able to lay traps and be able to fuck the majority of people up, right? Especially
So when you
like,
say lay traps, like anticipate what the guy's going to do before he does it, or
so
trick him into a move.
Exactly what you just said. Anticipate what he's going to do before he does it, and you're there. You're already to the finish before he's going into your trap, essentially. You're open up, you're placing a bunch of traps everywhere, and you're making guys run into your traps, and you're using the rules of jiu-jitsu to your advantage to start doing all sorts of wizardry and sorts of cool submissions and all sorts of cool things like that. Like you're starting to paint your own picture is really what it is at purple belt. So at blue belt, you're just learning how to paint, right? You're learning because martial arts is an art, right?
Yeah.
As a white belt, you don't know how to paint any pictures, right? As a blue belt, you learn how
Like
the
paint by
techniques-
number.
You learn the techniques behind painting, and you can paint basic pictures, right? And now at purple belt, you're going to start painting in-depth pictures and start connecting the dots and start developing your own pathways and start being able to trick people into traps and stuff like that. That's what a good purple belt, that's what a purple belt should be. And now, but you are not able to necessarily convey what you are doing to everybody else, right? You're in the developmental stage of your martial arts career where you are trying to figure out what picture you're going to paint, how you're going to paint it, and what it looks like, and you're going to start painting it, right? And then as a brown belt, you can teach other people how to paint, right? You've learned how to paint. You're a painter now. You've painted some cool masterpieces. You've done some really cool shit. Now you can teach other people how to paint, right? And then black belt is really subjective, really. Black belt, as they always say, like everything's kind of all politics, right? Everything's kind of just everything, no matter what it is in life, it's kind of just like depending on where you're at in life, depending on what's going on with you and your instructor, depending on what you've done with your accolades, depending on a lot of different things. But a lot of the time, your black belt depends on one thing. It's when your instructor decides to give you the black belt.
Right.
And for every instructor, kind of, especially being in the game this long, I've seen a bunch of different reasons for people getting their black belt. I've seen this guy recently, I'm not going to say his name, and I even believe that he deserves his black belt, kind of, a little bit. But this guy's been training for like 15 years, right? He's been like 15, 16 years, but for the last 4 or 5 years, he has only really been focused on his job because he has a wife and kids, and he's only been doing his day job for the last 4 or 5 years, maybe training once or twice a week.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
just to keep his skills
just to
relevant.
keep his skills, just training when he can, when he has the time for it. But his majority of his obligations and his responsibility are to his family and to his job.
Right.
He's not doing jiu-jitsu like that anymore, but he never stopped doing jiu-jitsu. He never
Right.
stopped, you know? And so recently this guy just got his black belt, and I went up to him and I was like, yo, dude, like, you still train?
Awkward.
Yeah, and he kind of laughed and he was like, dude, I don't deserve this. Like, I don't know what they're doing right now. This is kind of like a ceremonial thing because this is like a big seminar type thing. Like, I honestly don't even really want this. I don't know what's going on. I didn't expect this. Like, but they're, you know, what am I going to do? Say no? And I was like, oh no, dude, no, you deserve it, bro. Like, you definitely deserve it. But I was
you put in the time.
I was just curious. Like, I wasn't, you know, where do you train at? And he's like, oh, dude, like, I don't really train anymore, bro. Like, that's why I don't really want this. Like,
Right.
I haven't trained. I haven't taken a jiu-jitsu class in over 2 months. And I was like, that guy got his black belt.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So, like, what the hell is a black belt? A black belt is all when the stars have aligned, essentially.
Yeah.
Right?
I've heard two
You never
things.
quit. You never quit jiu-jitsu.
I was just
You
going to say.
just didn't quit, bro. You just didn't quit, and then one day your instructor felt good. And he was like, oh, here you go.
I've heard two things about being a black belt. One, I got this plaque made for the gym I used to work out with. We work out at Dream MMA in Valencia. Really good guy named Jeff Martin. He's under the Machado lineage. Like, really, really good guy. MMA fighter, has like 30 fights, and like now that he's older, almost 40, he's like focusing mostly on jiu-jitsu, got his black belt. I got him a placard that said, a black belt is just a white belt that never quit. Like,
Exactly.
if you just don't quit and you keep showing up, you'll get there eventually. So that's one thing I've heard about a black belt. And then I've also heard there's some schools where it's like, hey man, if you don't have the ability to articulate, or you don't have the depth of knowledge to teach other people how to at least get to a blue or purple belt, you'll never be a black belt. Because like you have to have like such a conceptual knowledge that you can pass that knowledge on to the next generation. Because you can be the baddest ass brown belt in the history of the world, but maybe, I don't know if this is true or not, but maybe the idea of the black belt is not only that you're like a great student, but now you can become the teacher, right? Like you move from being Luke Skywalker to Obi-Wan Kenobi.
In theory, how it's supposed to be, but there's also people that just like, if you're only pure focus is world domination, right? I'm Khamzat Chimaev. I kill everybody. That's you. That's what consumes you. That's all that floods your mind.
That guy doesn't want to teach anyone.
You think you give a fuck about showing your knowledge? You don't care. You're not trying. It's not your path, bro.
Yeah.
But you've also managed to destroy every single person in front of you. The other people's path, that was their path. Oh, they're doing well in competition and they're doing well constructing people. Well, this guy just smashed him, made him look like he's a white belt. You're going to tell that guy he's not a black belt?
But I'm sure
you
that
know what I mean.
I'm sure
like,
that was
in theory,
also
you're supposed to be able to. Like, if
Right.
like I said, a brown belt even is supposed to be able to be a good instructor.
Right.
But I've met black belts that are world champions that are god awful instructors.
Right.
And I've met purple belts that are excellent instructors, but they don't roll very well. You know what I mean? So it's two separate things: competing and instructing. And in theory, right, and like you are, right, on paper supposed to be good at instructing and good at competing as a black belt, but you could just be a good instructor and get your black belt. You could be just a good competitor and get your black belt. You could not be a good instructor and not a good competitor and still get your black belt as long as you trained 15 years and developed a good relationship with the coach.
So I'm
what I mean?
going to put
Like,
you on the spot. What do you think you need to improve on personally in your life, on the mat, your own skills, your teaching ability? What do you think you need to improve on? Or maybe it's just like, hey, I need 2 more years time and grade at a brown belt, and I'll kind of expect the fact that I'm at a black belt level. What do you think you need personally to get to a black belt level?
Me personally, I think one of the major ones is responsibility and maturity, which I've been trying to work on a lot lately. Trying to make sure that I'm reliable, I'm responsible, I'm mature, I'm presentable. That's why I cut my hair. That's why I've been trying to be more well-spoken and just more responsible in general, you know what I mean? I'm trying to be on time everywhere I get to, which is a really, really, really difficult thing of mine, getting to places on time. But I'm trying. That's the other thing. Acknowledging your holes and trying to patch your holes. So I'm trying to identify my holes. You know, Sometimes I'm a little lazy when it comes to like leaving my house, and so I end up being late to certain places. Sometimes I'm bad at scheduling things out and like remembering what my schedule looks like. And so I've been trying to really focus on fixing those things and just be more responsible and mature the last couple months. And also technical aspect wise, which I think is one of the smaller things. I could ask Coach Casey and he might say differently, but I think technically wise, I need to get better at my wrestling and my takedowns and my guard passing and my top pressure, which I've gotten a lot better at my guard passing and my top pressure. One of my last competitions, I got on top of the guy and I just rape choked him past his guard, just smashed him, and I felt him instantly break. Like it was strange. I just felt his energy leave his body. He didn't want to fight no more. And so I've been trying to work on my wrestling a lot, my guard passing, and my pressure. Because Casey, Casey's
big on pressure. Get on top, pressure. Smash him.
Get on top. If you're on your back, you're losing.
Yeah.
Even though we train at 10th Planet and the entire system is built off of your back and the guard, but if you're on your guard, you're losing. But it's true. It is true.
Because in a real fight, if somebody's in their guard, they're just drilling you in the face.
That's the other thing, dude. Everything Casey says, man, is true. Every single word that comes out of that man's mouth is true. Everything that he says is unarguable and true. But also, on the flip side, everything in life is yin and yang. Within the black, there is that little circle of white. And within the white, there is that little circle of black. You know what I mean? And so I've just been trying to come to a compromise with him, and he's also been kind of coming to a compromise with me. He's been really embracing my leg locks and my guard and like a lot of the things that he hasn't really embraced as much as he could have in the past. He has been lately, so he's been really awesome lately. We've been working together, and I think he's noticed me making an attempt to do the things that I have not been doing in the past.
Patrick, same question for you, man. Like, where are you at in your evolution? And like, what do you feel like you need to move from a brown to black level? Because I will say for both of you, I've taken both of your classes several times. And one of the things I really enjoy is that both of you are really articulate instructors in very different ways. Jordan has like this skill of being able to relate jiu-jitsu to like fighting and history and like theory of where you want to be in body position. And then I really appreciate Patrick because he's like, dude, I want to do minimum effort for maximum reward. This is exactly where you place your body and your limbs to make sure like you're doing the right thing with minimum effort, maximum reward. But you guys are both really articulate, which I appreciate. So what do you think you need to do, Patrick, to like get to that black belt level?
Just to address that, I call it a lot lazy jiu-jitsu when I'm joking around.
I say the same thing, bro. No way.
It's really efficiency jiu-jitsu, and then like the underlying principle for me is relative work rate. Like no matter who you are, I'm just trying to make you work harder than I am.
Yeah,
like,
and you're really good at it. It's really frustrating when I think I'm in and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing yet, but when I think I'm in an advantageous position, and then you literally just shift like 8 inches, I'm like, fuck, I'm starting all over again with this 230-pound panda on top of me. This blows. Yeah. So, yes, you absolutely make people exert maximum effort for minimum movement on your part.
I tell everybody that I love, I'm taking away from Pat real quick, but I tell everybody that I'm super lazy, right? I'm a stoner and I'm lazy. That's why I like jiu-jitsu, is because it allows me to be lazy and tie people up.
Right,
Go on,
right.
Pat.
So like self-reflecting things I think I need to work on. This is something that's come up with me. I had a conversation with a couple people about this. We spoke earlier about how competition is...
Whoa, shit. There's some massive fucking bugs flying through our place right now.
It was on my shoulder. Holy fuck. He hit me in the neck and landed right on my shoulder. I got punched, bro.
Is that the one we knocked off the green screen?
Yeah. Jordan will fight any human being, but a large locust just scared the shit out of him.
I don't like flying bugs, bro.
All right. Being self-reflective, Patrick.
I think one thing that I need to get back to is that competitive drive and the want to compete again. Not even want to compete. I don't have to want to do it, but I should go do it to, again, like I said, it makes me happy to see the people that train with me go out, compete and win, or if they lose, I'm just proud of them for going out there. Like I tell I got a couple people, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so nervous about competing." And a really good friend of mine told me this a while back, and it stuck with me. And he said, "The people that love you before you go out and compete are gonna love you afterwards, no matter what. Like, none of this shit fucking matters. Like,
Right.
the people that love you are gonna love you the same, and people that are only with you if you win, fuck them. Like, they don't actually love you." So that stuck with me a lot, and I tell that a lot to some of the students that train with me and are nervous about competing. I'm like, look, I'm gonna love you and I'm gonna be proud of you no matter what. So I think getting back to competition is something for me. Like, fortunately, since I moved back from Korea, I've had a lot of injuries due to a couple things. I think I could focus better on my habits outside of jiu-jitsu. Like Scott mentioned, I am a large fellow. Here's the thing. Both of my parents are were professional chefs. I learned how to cook when I was super young. I fucking cook really well. And I also grew up in a brewing company. So I like to cook, I like to eat, and I like to drink beer. And I like to do jiu-jitsu. Like, those are my things. So just being better about that and setting a better example for my students and everything. Because, like, again, you know, it's good to be an example for people. I've focused a lot on my teaching ability. I think that's important, but I think something I work on is being a better example for everybody out there. Like, you know, it's cool that I fucking I look the way I do. If you've never seen me, I drink beer. Like,
I mean, he looks like a panda. He looks like a panda. He's got a panda belly, but then when he like inverts and rolls around like he's, I don't know, a flexible 100-pound 13-year-old, it's really frustrating because I'm like, somebody your size shouldn't move like that.
Yeah, I've gotten that for years because actually I tore my groin when I was in high school as well. Before I tore my groin, I could do a full splits and I never trained flexibility. Like, I was just always naturally flexible. I was also hit by a car. And so my right hip's been fucked up since then. But yeah, I would think that's a big thing. The two biggest things for me is kind of going back to my roots of jiu-jitsu with the competition focus. And then again, just setting a better example for everyone that trains with me as far as everything I do outside of jiu-jitsu. You know, I focus a lot on teaching. I am in love with teaching jiu-jitsu. Anyone that trains with me, if they want to stay after and like talk to me about jiu-jitsu, like, I'll fucking hang out for hours and like I won't even notice the time go by. Like, I just love to talk about it, you know, and I love when people ask questions. Like, you've heard this, if I ever teach class, I'm like, please ask me questions. Like,
right.
One, if you ask me the question, someone else probably has a question and they're too afraid to ask it. And two, I'm really hoping for questions I don't have a good answer to, because that excites me, because then I have to go learn more. And again, we talked about this being a big puzzle, and like, that's what jiu-jitsu is to me. Like, I just want to learn more. Like, I want to get deeper in this, and like, it's exciting to me, just the pursuit of that. And so again, I want the questions I can't answer well, because then I have to go learn more. And again, I want everybody to be fucking dope at jiu-jitsu. Like,
yeah.
I want everybody to be good at jiu-jitsu. I don't believe in having like hidden techniques or things you don't show people unless they train with you or pay you or whatever.
Yeah, this isn't Scientology, bro. I don't need to ascend to another level to get the next secret.
Exactly. Like, we're not Tom Cruise fucking shelling out however millions he has for Scientology. Like, I'll fucking teach. If you ask the question or you want to know, I'll talk about it. Like, I will tell anybody how to beat me, whatever you want, because then I just have to get better, and that excites me.
That's amazing, man. You know, we've hinted around it, and you've obviously got the Jardine hat on there. You know, Casey couldn't really articulate this because Casey jokes around. He's like, I think I'm the only person in the 10th Planet Network who has never been high on a jiu-jitsu mat. So he didn't really know how to articulate it. But why is...
Shout out Hardin, by the way, my sponsor.
Oh, I keep saying Jardine. Hardin. Sorry,
Hardin.
like a garden. Hardin.
Yes.
Hardin. I should get my wife in here. She's Hispanic. Hardin. The garden. Oh, that makes sense now. Now I'm remembering 7th grade Spanish. Hardin, the garden, because they're a garden of weed. I get it. Damn. That's so cool. You have a sponsor. I want to, Chris. We got to get a sponsor for the podcast. Like somebody has to be willing to give us $1 for the like 100 views we get an episode. Then we can officially say we're sponsored. So somebody explain to me, please, why the weed culture is so intertwined with the with jiu-jitsu. Because I've told this story once before. Is that the gym is really respectful. The kids and the families park in the front, and the adults park in the back. And even when there's a switch over from the kids class to the adult class, if somebody's getting high, they do it in the back parking lot. But my son was with me one time at open mat, and he knows I smoke a lot of cigars. And a bunch of dudes, probably Jordan, was walking in from the back door for open mat. He's like, Dad, man, their cigars smell way different than your cigars. Why could they go smoke cigar in 5 minutes and your cigars take like a whole movie? And I'm like, well, buddy, it's a different kind of cigar that you're smelling. So why is the weed culture so intertwined with the jiu-jitsu culture?
2 words. Eddie Bravo.
Yeah, no, I get that he's a stoner, but like, I get it. I get the influential power of Eddie Bravo, but like, people aren't getting stoned the 5th, 6th, 500th time doing jiu-jitsu because they look up to Eddie Bravo. There has to be some... There's got to be some benefit, though, right? Like,
for sure, there's a shit ton of benefits, bro. He opens up your eyes to all the benefits. But Eddie is the reason that because before, it's not just because of Eddie. Even before Eddie was doing jiu-jitsu, like even before I did jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu and cannabis has always been intertwined. Same thing, how like jiu-jitsu, cannabis and surfing are intertwined. Cannabis and skateboarding are intertwined. Cannabis and counterculture are intertwined. And cannabis and athletics are intertwined. Yeah. You look at all these NBA players, all these football players. Look at Michael Phelps. Yeah. Look at any athlete. So for one, cannabis and counterculture is intertwined, and cannabis within athletics is already intertwined.
Right.
And so it just took an influential person like Eddie Bravo to be outspoken and let everybody know, and also not only outspoken but do something legendary like beating Royler Gracie in Brazil. So that's the reason what really blew up marijuana and made it acceptable and open, because it's not like it wasn't there. It was always there. It's always there. It was always there. But the Brazilians were smoking weed, and like they weren't telling anybody that they were smoking weed. Right. You know what I mean?
And it was probably bad weed because it's Brazil.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the Brazilians. I'm talking about the Brazilians in California.
Yeah, that was better weed.
You know what I mean? Like the American Brazilians, like the Brazilians that were doing jiu-jitsu in America, and like a lot of jiu-jitsu students. Like you were smoking weed, but you didn't want to tell your professor because your professor would get mad at you. You know what I mean? And people were smoking weed, but you just didn't come onto the mats smelling like weed a lot of the time, or else your professor would get mad. But then Eddie made it acceptable. Eddie made it open. And then not only Eddie, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan had the podcast, right? The Joe Rogan Experience. And even back in the day. I don't even listen to the Joe Rogan Experience anymore because it's so overrated. I can't even bring myself to watch it because everybody else does it. Anything that's extremely popular that everybody else does, I hate. I can't stand it. Anything that's like real popular, like I like things before they're popular, and once it becomes popular, I can't like it anymore.
You know, it's like a horseshoe, though, right? It's like I remember somebody describing
you're a scene kid,
total scene kid. I remember somebody describing this to me as cool, like the spectrum of cool. I think I actually read this in Rolling Stone magazine, and they're like, what people don't understand is like cool and counterculture is a horseshoe where eventually, like David Hasselhoff is so uncool because he's doing Baywatch. He jumps that little chasm and he's right back to cool.
Yes.
Because the counterculture, like, you know, counterculture skater
everything
kids
rotates. Everything
got
rotates.
so cool. They jumped the horse, and now there's like, now there's whole stores like committed to selling the counterculture stuff. So it's like the horseshoe thing is weird. So you're going to come back around and you're going to fall back in love with the Joe Rogan podcast around 30 years old.
I still love the Joe Rogan podcast, but I just feel like an idiot watching it now, dude. I'm like, oh man, like what am I doing?
Don't let other people judge you by the fact that it's popular. It's okay.
It's like, I don't know. And it's just different now too, bro. He used to talk about mental health a lot more. Like mental health used to be a large topic on the Joe Rogan Experience. He used to talk about anxiety. He used to talk about mental health. He used to talk about about like guys and relationships and like how to talk to girls. This was a very common topic on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Right.
As of late, it's all political, bro. It's all COVID, China, fuck
Right.
Biden, Trump,
Well, he's
Republican.
50 now, Bar.
And I'm like, bro, like I get it, dude. I love everything you're saying. Fuck China, fuck Biden. I love Trump. Yes, everything you're saying politically, I agree with.
Right.
But like, dude, like, where are the real issues? Like, you understand how large mental health went up in COVID? And like, yeah, he talks about it. He still does talk about these issues. He still does bring it up. But there used to be, I don't know, it just used to feel much more genuine and much more authentic and much more real when I used to listen to it back in 2012, 2013, 2014. Like, it just felt like it was a different vibe, bro. It was a different tone. It was just a different thing, man. It's just, and everything changes. Nothing lasts forever. You know, so
I've told several people who are like, hey man, like you're fucking 40 something. Like I know you used to box and wrestle. I was like an okay wrestler in high school. I was like an okay wrestler. I was a decent wrestler on like a state champion team, right? So I just got my ass beat by my best bud, Stu Young. He was the coach's son. He's also the strongest human being I've ever met, Division I wrestler. He's now getting into jiu-jitsu. I think he just got his blue belt. When he comes up, you guys will have to roll with him. It's scary, bro. You're like, if this guy can openers me, he's going to break my spine because he's like one of those Nebraska fucking corn-fed.
open the guard, bro.
Yeah, I know.
The can opener is not real, bro.
Yeah,
That's
no,
like a fairy tale. That's not a real submission.
When he sits down on your half guard and then just tries to rip your neck off your body, it's scary because you two would beat him, but for an average dude, he's awkwardly strong. So we'll bring him up here and do like a takedown clinic because he was so slow he can't sprawl. So he had to do all this weird like Greco-Roman head control. Like he'll teach you a ton about takedowns and you can teach him how to work on the mat.
The great Andrew Ram told me one time, never let a grown man or never let a man touch your face. Ever, under any circumstance.
I actually stole from Andrew Ram, and these are my favorite things to reference in jiu-jitsu. There are 3 rules for jiu-jitsu. Number 1, win.
Okay, good rule.
Number 2, don't touch my face. And number 3 is don't look at me. So those are his 3 rules for jiu-jitsu. Yes. I have a notebook at home I used to train with Ram quite a bit, and I wrote on the front of the notebook random thoughts.
Ramisms.
Ramisms as they were called.
Explain to people that don't know who we're talking about who Ram is.
So Andrew
He used to be
Ram,
a coach at 10th Planet Las Vegas.
Yeah, he used to be a coach at 10th Planet Las Vegas. Very, very interesting guy. I love Andrew Ram to death. I trained a lot with him. And
shout out Andrew Ram.
Yeah, his thought process on jiu-jitsu and life is very unique. And he would give me like these random thoughts, as I called them. And they're things that stick in my brain, and I think about them. They're simple one-liners, and I think about them for years and like ponder them. Because some of the stuff he says is like literally like wizard living on the mountain kind of thing. Like he's the guru. Like,
because I'm thinking like, don't let them look at you. There's so many things where like, if you frame people's face away from you, if you're standing and they can't see you eye to eye, they're fucked. You're winning.
Yes.
I thought about this a lot. So the rules number 2 and 3, the underlying principle as I see it for both of those is spinal control, right?
Spinal.
It's spinal.
It's one of my favorite words.
If you can't look at me, that means I'm controlling your spine, right? And if you can't touch my face, you can't control my spine, the most important end of the lever. Plus, that's where the majority of my off buttons are, right? You choke me out, like knock you out. Like this is where 90% of the off buttons are. We got like liver shots and everything, but like those are the off buttons. So if you can't touch my face and you can't look at me, I'm probably achieving rule number 1, win. That for me, rules 2 and 3, like the underlying principle is all about spinal control, right? And again, there are 2 ways we can control the spine reliably. There's the head and the hips. Head is usually easier to control. It's a lot less strong, but like if we want to make a human significantly weaker, right, point their head and their hips away from you, they can't really do damage to you behind them, especially when you're on the ground. Like when you're standing, there's turning kicks and everything like that. But like if you control their spine and face it away from you, they can't look at you, they can't touch your face, I'm winning.
I love that.
So,
what's your favorite ism?
Favorite random thought.
Ramism.
Or any ism. Like what's like your one principle? Like I was talking to Derek, for example, and this is almost embarrassing to admit, but he's really good, so I don't really care. We were practicing like some defenses and some chokes and like just really, I was thinking of it conceptually. I'm like, well, if I can escape from everything, then I can feel comfortable like attacking things. So I'm like, fuck, I got in a bad position. I can get out of this. So we were just practicing like some triangle defense, and all of a sudden he locked it in tight, and I like fell asleep on his balls. Yes. And I'm just in a triangle, and I come to, and he's like slapping me in the face. He's like, "You okay, bro?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude. I think I just like gassed out there." He's like, "No, I don't think you gassed out. I think you passed out." I'm just like laying in his balls. It's pretty embarrassing. Yes. And his ism was like, "Hey man, your left hand is the needy boyfriend, and your right hand is the fucking over aggressive like codependent girlfriend. They always got to be together. Like 2 hands in, 2 hands out. Like these 2 hands, you don't ever end up with the boyfriend over here and the girlfriend over here, because then you're fucked." And I'm like, oh, that's such a good ism, because like in jiu-jitsu, like as soon as your arms are separated,
I was gonna say this is a very strange.
And you're like one arm in, one more arm out. He's like, bro, you got to get the girlfriend and the boyfriend together, and you're winning. Whether it's like a gable grip behind their body, around their legs, 2 of them in between their legs. If you get the girlfriend and the boyfriend always being together, you're gonna generally be safe in jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, oh, that's a good ism.
Join us next week for the second half of this podcast.